All right, greetings and welcome. This is Coach Veronica Marie. And if you're new here, I am a personal trainer, a group fitness instructor, a nutrition coach, and an emotional wellness coach. I also enjoy serving as a feminine mentor for growth and development of all things divine feminine, if you will. If you are interested in working with me personally, you can find me on my website at veronicamarie.com. I do have an ebook out. That ebook is entitled Self Intimacy, A Beginner's Guide to Self Discovery. And so that book is for anyone who wants to understand how they work, how they process, how to practice self love from the inside out in a psychological, spiritual, emotional way. So that's on my website. If you want to connect on social media, we can connect by just kind of uh, look for hashtag Veronica Marie. My name is Veronica Marie. And you should pull up some video, and that will lead you to my information. And so today I want to talk about authenticity as it relates to self love and self care. Practicing authenticity is an essential part of self-care and self-love. So I've been reading a bunch of different articles on authenticity just to get an idea of what the professionals are saying about it, right? And so a lot of those articles break authenticity up into several areas. And so I want to talk about each of those areas. So I want to begin by looking at the ego, right? Our ego is what keeps us safe from repeat patterns that are painful. Our ego is the separate I. It's your entity localized in a human body with a brain. It is the unique set of experiences, conditioning, and such. The ego is a byproduct of having a human brain. If we didn't have the brain, then we wouldn't have our neural circuitry. We wouldn't have conditioning. We wouldn't see things a particular way. We wouldn't perceive the world the way that we do because the world is a whole perception of our eyes. And what we see in our eyes is a projection. We take in light beams, organize those beams together. The brain makes them make sense. And then we become aware, right? So if we didn't have the brain, then the ego would not be a thing. Am I saying the ego is not important? No, it's very important for us here on this earth plane, but it must be kept in perspective. The ego is not expansive enough to rule much of anything. Remember, I just said it's limited to your conditioning, to your experiences. So if you haven't experienced something, then your ego cannot really lead you. And if you've experienced something similar, right, then your ego may be able to give you past information to help you navigate it, right? But that giving past information to help you navigate what you will do or should do is is not leadership. That is the ego in servitude, right? In servitude to what? Because there's something that you wanted before you feared it. There's something that you wanted before you desired it or were excited about it. So, what faculty of the being actually does the direction? And right now, I want to call that the spirit, your spirit. We can also call it your higher self. We're calling it the higher self because it's not associated with the brain, so it's more expansive. We can even call it the more expansive self. Your expansive self, right, will give you you in your brain a hit, a desire, a thought, an idea. And the more you put your attention on it, the greater the intensity becomes. Your attention is invigorating. It will invigorate ideas, concepts, even the energy of people and places. And so your ego's job is to carry that out and to carry it out in the path of least resistance, most peace. Okay. So you see, your ego is getting information from your expansive self or your spirit. It is not the other way around. Okay. So when your ego receives that information from your expansive self, several reactions begin to take place. Number one, your archive of conditioned experiences gets activated. In other words, let's say your ego begins to search the files. What do we know about this? Where have we seen this before? Where have we experienced it before? It will start pulling up files. How did that work out? Oh, there's strong emotion with that. Let's not do that again. Oh, there's strong emotion with this. It's a beautiful emotion. Let's definitely do that again. And so the ego serves the spirit. Now, what happens if you don't have a file? Meaning you haven't seen this before, experienced this thing before. Your ego, depending on how it's trained, may go, okay, new information coming. What do we know? Let's piece information together. Let's gather more information and let's move in an informed way, right? Or if your ego is not trained like that because you haven't been aware or practicing it, it may pull up the closest file to that experience. It won't be the same experience, but one really close. And if your ego is not trained, it will begin to send out notifications of fear, danger, distress, red flags. And you will experience that as anxiety or uncertainness. You may find division within your being. Part of you wants to do this, part of you is like, no, don't do that. When you experience division within your being, it's a sure sign, excuse me, a car is passing. It's a sure sign that something in your ego, right, is conflicting with something in your spirit. And I don't think that's wrong. I don't think that's bad. I think it's necessary. Number one, so we can become more self-aware. So that's one of the categories of authenticity, self-awareness. Are you aware of the different aspects of yourself? Are you aware of what is egoic? And egoic is not bad or wrong, but do you know it? Can you discern between that and your spirit? Can you discern whether or not your ego is pulling out an old file or comparing a similar file? Can you discern whether or not fear is something old or something relevant to the thing that you're experiencing? Do you know what to do with it? Okay. So self-awareness. How aware are you of self? How aware are you of your ego's operation? So this is shadow work. You have to look at your fears face to face, right? When they come. I don't believe just pulling up fears, right? If you can think of them mentally, do. But when situations happen and you get triggered into fear, it's a good opportunity. A good opportunity to ask these questions. Is this fear relevant? Is there something similar where I'm drawing an association? Is there something I can learn from this? Can this fear help me gather new information? This is self-work. This is self-care. This is self-love. It is important for you to not only understand the obvious things about your ego, but the subtleties. In what ways does your ego cause you to back down from things out of fear? When we talk about authenticity, right? How authentic you can be in a given situation does depend on your level of self-awareness. It also depends on your level of integration. So if you have areas of yourself that feel ashamed, not worthy, not enough, not valid, not worthy. And right away, people go, oh, I know I'm worthy. Oh, I know it's valid. But they're operating in ways that contradict that. This tells me that they don't fully know that they're worthy, or let me be even more specific. They don't know that this part of them is worthy. They don't know that this part of them is valid, right? They believe in the validity of their human experience, like their human beingness. But when it comes to certain areas, authenticity may be a problem. And if a person struggles with authenticity, they have a lot of blame in their system. They become victimized in their own stories, powerless because someone else is doing this. Someone else made them do something. They were not allowed to do something. Someone else tried to control them, right? They begin to stand in a powerless stance because they are not aware of the subtleties that I'm speaking of. So again, your level of authenticity will only go as deep as you go within understanding yourself. If you stay on the level of blaming, shaming, and guilting others and being in a powerless story, you're going to find it very hard to be authentic. Because when people come against those ideas, when people come against what you have to say, when they have different ideas, opinions, and values, right? You already exist in a certain fearful state inside, a certain invalidated state inside, an unintegrated state inside. So what they do is they touch that. They intensify that energy in you with their disagreement, with their criticism and such. They touch what's already there. So if you want to operate in self-care and self-love, you won't blame. You won't bring yourself into a powerless energy and say it's their fault, it's them, it's the way that they are and what they did. And every time people do this and things of that nature, what you will do is begin the excavation of your shadow in that particular area. That means you're going to have to admit that there are spaces that are fearful of speaking up within you. The anxiety you feel is not because this person has a strong personality. It's not even because they're narcissistic or controlling or anything. It's because in this area, you have a part of you that operates in fear. It does not allow you to come forward. I hope this makes sense. Self-awareness is part of self-care, self-love, and self-authenticity. Authenticity, right? It's being brutally honest with yourself first and integrating that honesty and into something that is in love within you, integrating that into something that is empowered within you, where your inner stand, right? We always use this word inner stand. I understand. Well, your inner stance needs to be of understanding of these aspects of yourself. Most people stop at awareness of their emotion. They want to tell you about their emotion and how they feel and speak their truth. That's a level of it, and I honor it. The deeper reflection is in the shadow work of the subtle nature, the nature of the difference, the subtle nature of the difference between what is egoic and what is spirit led. And this is a constant work in process. And nobody is completely free of this work. They may be farther along in this work than someone else, but no one is completely free. Anytime you go powerless, there is some space where you are in inauthenticity. There's some space that is not experiencing self-care. There's some space that is not experiencing self-love. When you feel anxiety about communication, there's some space speaking up to you about what is within. Your inner stance is fear. It's not just fear because in your childhood you weren't able to speak. We know that that does bring a type of fear forward. We know that, and it's valid. But deeper than that, right, it is that you have not yet come to the understanding, the inner standing, right, that what you feel not only is valid, right, because we'll fuss about something is valid, but still be feeling shame about it, still be feeling offended and defense about it. Your inner standing is not just that it's valid, but you are self-validated such that you cannot be offended if someone has an opinion of you in that area. This is shadow work. This is self-care. This is integration. This is authenticity. So when you are in experiences with people and you have a little hurt, a little pain, emotional discomfort, can you discern what is going on in your ego for real? Or do you point your finger out there first and say it's them because they said that, they hurt you so bad, they caused so much discomfort, they betrayed you, and all of the words that we use? Where do you go first? Right here is the first question of authenticity. Where do you go first? You got to be honest with yourself. Most humans, because we practice that for almost our whole life, have a tendency to blame others. It was something they did and something they said that wasn't right, that wasn't just, it wasn't fair, it was selfish, it was inconsiderate, it was not loving. That particular situation is bringing an awareness to the ways that you go powerless within yourself due to your shadow. When you are blaming others, you are not in authenticity. Now, you are being authentic to your level of awareness. Yes, you are, because if you don't know you're doing this, then that's the deepest level of authenticity you can reach. And I honor that, and it should be honored because they're processes. Does this make sense? Right. So let's put this in a practical example. Let's say you are with someone, they ask you something, and you go into, oh, I don't want them to think this about me, or I don't want them to judge me, or take away their communication, or take away something. So I'm going to answer in this way. It's not what I really want, but I'm just do this because I want to prevent them from behaving in a certain way. In this situation, that's as deep as you can go into authenticity, admitting that you don't, to yourself, that you don't want them to see you a certain way. And that is a level of authenticity, but it's not the greatest self-care, because you're going to go into that situation in violation of yourself, in violation of your true desires, right? And don't get me wrong, there are times where we're going to have to do something that we don't want to do, but we don't do it before examining the benefit. If you don't see a benefit, I don't know. I think you need to find a benefit before you do it, because if you don't, you're going to be excluding yourself and including someone else for the sake of whatever it is you're trying to achieve. And the end result usually is some type of unrealistic expectation, some type of resentment. The greatest amount of self-care is to, number one, admit to self, I'm in fear. So this fear is about to cause me to make a decision that I really don't want to make, right? What is the fear? The fear is they may see me a certain way, or they may not help me next time, or whatever the case may be, right? Is the thing I'm trying to avoid very important to me? That's the question, because maybe it is. For example, maybe this person is your ride to work every day. So if you go against whatever, they may not give you a ride. So how will you get to work? This is assessing the benefit. If the benefit is important enough, at least you can admit to yourself, I am doing this out of fear, but I've assessed the benefit, so I'm doing it for myself. I'm not doing it for them. They're not causing me to do it, controlling me, manipulating, or anything like that. I have assessed it. and determine that it's to my benefit for me to do that. That's another level of authenticity, where self-care is also included, self-love, right? So there's another level to it, and there is saying to the person, right now, I don't really want to do that, but if I don't do it, I'm in fear that you may not drive me to work. Um, and so I'd like to talk about that because I don't want to live in fear. I don't want to do things I don't want to do. I also want to be upfront with you. That's another level. The level that you choose depends on who you are, where you are, and what you can handle, and what you can handle, and what you can handle. Because if you're talking to a very upfront person, you may not be ready to process the things that they have to say, which may cause you to go into a powerless energy. So a question is, to yourself, what am I ready to handle? And that's going to determine my level of authenticity, how I express from that level of authenticity. I hope this is making sense. Self-awareness is multi-layered, multi-dimensional, and so is authenticity. It's going to be difficult for you to be authentic if you can't think this deeply. If you just minimize your decision making, which is another aspect of authenticity, according to research. The ability to understand your own decision making process. When you understand your own decision making process, how you go about making decisions, right? You could decide what level of authenticity you want to be on. So if we bring this in the realm of romance, if you are unaware that you have abandonment fears and how this affects you in a deep way, then you may make decisions based upon solely the other person's point of view, their thought process. You may make decisions based upon your fear. And if a person asks you, why did you do that? What made you do it? What brought you to that conclusion? You might feel triggered by fear that you are unaware of. When you are triggered, there are levels to authenticity, levels to self-care, right? The first level is admitting that I feel triggered. Now, most people can do this. I feel triggered, and they say that to the other person. But the next step is they go into a powerless energy, which is you did this, and now because of you, I feel that. The next level is understanding your own decision-making process. I feel triggered, and I know I usually feel triggered when I think that a person is going to remove their connection or their love or their communication or their assistance or whatever it is. I know I have a tendency to do that, right? And so I don't want to do it, but I don't know what else to do right now. Well, and a suggestion is create emotional space if you can. Emotional space might be right now, I'm feeling contracted. And I know it's because of a way that I'm thinking inside, and I'm trying to isolate that way of thinking before I talk about it. Some people you're talking to can help you process in real time because they're real time processors. Some people will feel like, okay, we'll go ahead and do that. Some people don't do this within themselves. And so if you try to create emotional space, then they will feel triggered and begin to try to press and force and things like that. Authenticity, right? There's levels to it. There's situational authenticity. There's authenticity about where you really are. There's authenticity about speaking up. But remember, when you speak up about something, you're not speaking up so someone can get their way. So you can get your way. You're not speaking up so they can see that they're wrong when you're being authentic, unless that's what you think. And then it makes sense for you to say in authenticity, I'm speaking up because I feel you're wrong about something and I want you to respond a certain way. You see, there's so many levels to authenticity, and you get to choose the level based upon your awareness of the aspects of the self, what you're speaking from, where you're speaking of from, Also your patterns of decision making. I hope this is making sense. Authenticity. All right. So in authenticity, you may choose this term, fake it until you make it. Sometimes you really have to cope. And the authenticity of it is I'm coping. This is not a long-term solution, I know, but right now I'm finding the best way to cope with this. Okay. So we're not going to fake it till we make it in unaware energy. At least you know that you're doing it, right? Sometimes you have to be in an atmosphere where you are required to not show up in certain ways. Authenticity is not refusing to show up in those ways. Authenticity is not going into your ego and standing up and drawing the line in the sand. And unless that's where you are in a state of unawareness, then that is the deepest uh, integrity or authenticity you can find. Then that is the deepest. But a deeper level is realizing, okay, my ego feels threatened because someone is asking me to show up in a different energy. This is my conditioning. I've learned somehow, some way that I must go against the grain. I must be the black sheep. I must be the one. I've made that an identity. That is my ego. And I'm choosing to go along with my ego. That's a level of authenticity. I know it's egoic, but I want to go along with it anyway. Another level is realizing your conditioning and the way you're making this experience, and I mean this decision, and how your experiences have influenced that, and deciding whether or not the situation is beneficial. So if I go in this person's establishment with a halter top and Daisy Duke shorts, they may not serve me the food that I want. It's authentic because I am deciding that I want this food. It's beneficial to me. And because it's beneficial, I will submit to rules because it's beneficial. This is the matrix. The matrix has rules. I will do that because I see the benefit in getting the food that I like. I really hope this is making sense. So we're trying to not only become aware of the fact that we're making decisions, but how we make the decisions, right? And whether or not those decisions are in service or not, right? Whether they're ego-led and not whether they're ego-led and not, but whether they are ego-led because of conditioning or ego-led because of health, emotional health. All right. I hope this is making sense. The last part is idealism. Okay. When you are in idealistic energies, you think things are supposed to go a certain way, and you judge those things, right? And I'm not saying that judgment is wrong. This is self-awareness. This is shadow work. Yes, I judge things. Yes, I judge people, because judgment helps me to understand what's in alignment and what is not. Okay. So if we bring this into the realm and context of relationships, whether it be friendships, family relationships, romantic relationships, your ideal may be that you're going to come forward and you're going to be however you're going to be. This person is going to accept it and you're going to live happily ever after. That idealism will cause you to move in inauthenticity because you're looking for the happily ever after. You bring all of yourself to the table, everything is happy, everything is fine. Because inevitably, someone is not going to like what you're doing, what you said, not agree with it, things of that nature. They're going to see things differently. If you hold true to an ideal could sound something like this: you should love me unconditionally. That's an idealistic statement. You should love me unconditionally. So when the person begins to show conditions to the connection, maybe there's something about you they don't really get with, something about you that doesn't align. When they start showing disapproval, that idealistic idea is going to cause suffering within you, and you're going to want to get out of the suffering, right? So you're going to go into one of your patterns. One of your patterns may be to blame them and say it's something about them. Another pattern may be to shut down and decide you're not going to express that part of yourself because they're too judgmental. Because they judged you, you shut down. Because they judged you, you'll never tell them this again. You'll never be upfront again. Well, who are you being inauthentic to in that moment? Not only are you showing inauthenticity in that moment, you're not practicing good self-care, which and you're not practicing self-acceptance and self-love because someone else hasn't done it. This leads many people to making decisions that are not authentic in relationships, and then they call it losing themselves and loving too hard. They call it all kind of things. But until we're able to get to this deep level of self-understanding and shadow work, self-care, authenticity, we're going to remain in fear and powerless in our connections with others in the world at large. So let's say you have begun to not share certain things because you don't want the person to judge you, or they showed disapproval. Maybe they emoted in a way that you didn't like. So you decided you're not going to share that anymore. At least choose it in awareness. I'm deciding not to share anymore because I fear their judgment, because I want to avoid their disapproval, because I don't really want them to see and judge for themselves what's in alignment and what's not. I really rather keep it to myself. But don't blame them. Don't say, I didn't get to be myself and I didn't get to make decisions and I have no say and it's all their way or no way. If you're going to begin to deepen, you're going to have to, again, take a brutal look at your ways of operating. And when you are acting in a particular way, act that way because you chose it, but you are fully aware of your decision-making processes. You're fully aware of the aspects of yourself. You're fully aware of your conditioning. So that when you make that decision and you get results that you don't like, you will not be blaming someone else. You will take full responsibility for your creation. There's so many people walking around here wanting people to be authentic, wanting people to take accountability and things of that nature, but they're not doing it within themselves in a deep way. And you could tell because anyone demanding accountability, right, is probably in that situation complaining about the person rather than making decisions for themselves, having conversations and such. They're complaining, they're blaming, they're powerless in that situation, not because they're actually powerless, but because they've rendered themselves powerless because they are unaware. So self-care, self-love, authenticity, all of this is important when we're looking to connect on deep levels with people. You got to go deeper within yourself, right? Because every decision that you make has a depth. So if you commonly trivialize yourself, no, I just felt this. No, it was just that. No, it wasn't that deep. Yes, it was only that. Then you're going to trivialize others. And when others trivialize you, you're going to feel upset. Authenticity matters. All right. So this is the end of the teaching. While I was teaching, something was happening and I kind of got off target. So I hope what I said was making sense. And I hope you can really take from this what is going to be beneficial to you in your present and also in your future. If you find you need one-on-one coaching, you can find me on my website at veronicamarie.com. You can plug in on social media networks, #VeronicaMarie. And if you are watching the replay, please do consider subscribing and liking the live, even sharing it possibly if you found it helpful. All right, so that is it. Have a beautiful day and practice self-care, practice self-love, practice authenticity. Ashe.